This is the second session of our study on the practice of meditation. I'm glad more or less everybody's here. Again, if I may ask or suggest that it is a good trend, particularly if you're working on terms of a meditation discipline, it would be very necessary to come back on these particular classes and discuss about the whole thing. Doubtlessly that meditation practice is being one of the most important and at the same time confused subject that we experience, largely because of our own expectations as to that the practice of meditation should bring about a certain sense of tranquility, equilibrium, and a sense of highness, which has become one of the biggest problems. I think more or less that with last time when we discussed that, I think most of the area has been covered, but at the same time I would like to make another emphasis again and again, further emphasis on this particular need that the practice of meditation at this point is no more than or no less than that you are working with yourself and sitting by yourself alone, without entertainment, without further feedbacks, encouragement. So essentially, whether we sit in the practice alone or in the group situations, that doesn't make any differences particularly. That the group situation only provides that if you want to stand up and walk out, that the group situation somehow provides the group pressure that everybody's in the same boat, that you can't chicken out. The group situation provides a sense of fellowship of some kind, and that's the point. But however, at the same time that you are sitting alone, that the sanity and enlightened vibrations that has been created in the sitting practice of meditation is not particularly regarded as that inter-vibrant trip that when somebody is receiving the vibration that you're going to receive at the same time, so you in turn, even if you are in a bad shape, that you will be picked up by somebody else. It's kind of cosmic hitchhiking. And such a situation doesn't exist. And at this point, everybody's in their own little vehicle, which is called a body, and there's no other room for anybody else to accommodate in that particular body. So everybody has their own cars. So in fact, you don't have to hitchhike. And that seemed to be a basic point, which is very important because we have been told in many cases that even if you don't have such solid a commitment, the vibrations would pick up. The energy will pick you up and uplift you, in this case. It's been said. But somehow we should be very careful on that particular point of view. I don't think it is possible. And we should acknowledge that sooner we know the better. For one thing, we don't have any expectations if we know sooner. Another thing is that we could pull ourselves together waiting for someone to rescue you. And the sitting practice is independent and individual and a very lonely journey. Aloneness is the basic point. That when you sit either in a group situation or individually, that there is a sense of loneliness, a sense of a basic loneliness. That when you feel you are on the path, and your particular path is so special to you, extraordinary to you, that it will take a long time to relate such experience to somebody verbally. Sometimes a student might feel the sense of that you're being completely isolated and cut off. And sometimes a student might experience this loneliness is the basis of heroism in the positive sense. That you are making journey, nobody's telling you to make this journey, but you are making the journey. The only people who can help you to make this journey is somebody who could tell you that somebody else made this lonely journey. You could do so in the same way. It seems that this process is a very severe one, very strict one. But at the same time, this particular process is a quite happy one. Because there is a sense of conviction that we don't hitchhike, but we can do it ourselves. A sense of celebration, which is very powerful and very important. And that sense of celebration is how to practice meditation. That the sitting practice of meditation is expression of celebration, rather that you are getting into a traditional trap, imprisonment. So it is very important for us to realize the sense of loneliness when we sit, realizing the separateness, that we are individual entity, and further we begin to realize that we don't have even individualities at all. That's a further discovery. That the rug is pulled under our feet. at the beginning we begin to realize there's a house, there's accommodation, and the part of the house has a rug and a seat provided for us. Then we walk towards the seat where the rug is put, and we've said to ourselves, finally I've made it. Begin to relax. And then suddenly the whole floor along with the rugs collapses. We begin to realize that the journey that we're making towards the rug and the seat is somewhat a false one. That in any case we can't relax all that as we want it, and something is after us, which is our own sense of seeking for comfort and pleasure. I would like to present the meditation discipline also philosophically. Could we have this light back? Any possibilities of that? Thank you. I would like you to realize and also study on the topic of why meditate. What is meditation in any way, in spite of what we're doing here, sitting down and breathing and so on, so forth. What is the merit of meditation? And such question comes up, of course, quite rightly so. I would like to put that aside for a while. I would like to get into nitty-gritty of the actual practice first. Then, when you have some experience of the actual practice itself, I would like to relate with what it is all about. You might think this is not quite right, that we have a human right that we should know before where we're getting into. And Americans are usually very political minded. But before you get into the value judgment, you have to have some ideas of the value before you get into it. So therefore I'm presenting the situation of actual sitting practice, certain techniques that you can develop, work on yourself, and then having some ideas, some kind of exposure, then you can get into it and we could discuss about the value judgment situation, if you like. So that seems to be basically the important. That first of all, I would like to present what is gold. The gold is in yellow in color, and it's metallic. It is very heavy, and supposedly it is very expensive. And gold, what is the use of gold? Is that rich people make ornaments out of these, wear them as a status symbol, and it feels good when you have gold ornaments on your rings or earrings or whatever you have, bracelets, whatever you have. You feel that you're having gold ornaments, you feel good. And that's the basic point. In this case, what I'm presenting is just purely telling you what gold is, in a certain ordinary sense, rather than the social implication of wearing gold ornament, or the value of the wealth that wearing gold ornament. But we are just presenting gold as a yellow metallic thing. Here it is. It's just gold in the English language. And supposedly it's special metal. That's all what we're talking about tonight, anyway. And if you know that, then you can branch your research work, inquisitive openness, if you like, into all kinds of areas. Then you can research into what gold is all about. I would like to leave that later. For one thing, we don't have that much time in this particular course. Another thing is that we had to put a lot of effort and energy. And another thing is that it is my responsibility to make you completely highly inquisitive, that you will be looking into the situation, what will be suggested, and open skepticism is I'm trying to work up to that level. Sorry about the long-winded introductory thing. Forgive me. But I think it's necessary, if I might say so. This gold, you might have another opinion that what I'm going to say is something extremely gold-like and precious and valuable, but you might find disappointing. It is at all not special or extraordinary. But we are talking about practice of meditation. This particular point involves the basic development of simplicity, that our life has become extraordinarily complicated, hundreds of choices, possibilities, and all kinds of philosophy and all kinds of potentiality that if you buy and if you get into this particular trip, that then you are getting the best of the bargain, and that all kinds of things be provided to us, presented to us constantly. That includes that your ordinary life, when you relax yourself at home, watching television, or whether you are enrolled in an Naropa institute, that the same kind of salesmanship goes on constantly. That every professor of the Naropa Institute who are teaching various courses trying to make their best, make sure that you be entertained, that make sure that what you've signed up is the best and meet with your expectations of some kind. That's the pattern of the world. In fact, I'm not particularly blaming on a particular one situation or another situation. That's the general situation that goes on constantly. So what we're discussing here is simplifying all those choices, all those possibilities. That doesn't mean to say that you have to become a true believer. that you be completely convinced and converted into this particular trip, that you become evangelical. But we're talking in completely opposite. Simply trying to get into what we got to do, what we have to do in terms of practice of meditation. Just getting into what it is all about. Just simply getting into. Before we get reasoning mind function. So the first step from this point of view is, according to the tradition, it is called shamatha. Now you can take your notes. Shamatha, S-H-A-M-A-T-A. And the Tibetan word, if you like to know, just out of curiosity, is called shine, which is again S-H-I-N-E, circumflex on the E, which makes a sound, like in French, shine. The word shine or shamatha, which literally means peace, dwelling in the peace, abiding, more likely, abiding in the peace. But in this case, we are not purely talking about getting high in the peace, or developing composure of being in the state of lovey-dovey. But when we talk about a peace here, it's very, if you like to call it, almost frigid peace or rigid peace, which is a particular type of state of peace, which has no political implications in making peace opposed to warfare. And has nothing to do with the sexual connotation of making love, but it is peace in a very particular, extraordinary, eccentric way, according to the Buddha, who was a very eccentric person, and he attained enlightenment, which is extraordinary that we can't actually accept that, but actually he did it, so we have no choice. According to the Buddha, that one of his statements that he is mentioned in one of the gathas of the sutras, that it says that those who practices in a state of dwelling in a peace, shine practice, shamatha practice, that he's building his staircase towards enlightenment. So we are talking about constructing a staircase towards enlightenment, which needs a very precise measurement of carpentry, of sideboards completely measured, built properly, and steps being built properly, angles being looked at, and then finally choosing certain particular necessary nail which could bear the pressure of people walking over it, then hammering over it, building this particular staircase. So when we talk about this particular shine or this particular shamatha practice, we are talking about building a staircase very deliberately, properly, according to Buddha. A staircase to what? It doesn't really matter. Just a staircase is maybe good. Just we are building staircase. No promise, no blame. Let us simplify the whole situation. Just let us build this particular staircase very simply and directly. And building staircase steps requires certain amount of commitment. We discussed last time that sense of how to work with the breathing, how to work with the basic structure of situation and so forth. That's fine. We could work with that level. And let us take another step beyond that level. That is to say that when you sit and breathe, work with out breath, and the quotient of the building steps is enormous precision, enormous subtlety. That general sense of you're there, not trying to become frigid or rigid and solemn about the whole practice, but simply being there. When you sit, you actually sit. You don't think that you are sit. There's no room for thinking involved. You sit and you actually sat. And you breathe, you actually do breathe. And a sense of simplicity, almost in the level of naivety, that you do things so completely, wholeheartedly. You do things as they are. You actually get into it properly, thoroughly, and fully. You get into them completely correctly, as things as they are, because you have no other choice than that. You're getting into the situation very fully, directly, extremely simply. When you breathe, you actually breathe. Let me explain you several details about that. Ordinarily, what we do is, when we try to develop awareness or mindfulness of some kind onto the situation of like breathing, we tell ourselves that I'm going to breathe and be aware of it. And then I'm trying to get my mind together to do that. And then finally I'm going to focus my attention towards it. Then I'm going to watch what's happening. Then you watch it, then you do it. Then you begin to say, is this okay or is this not okay? So there's so much processes involved usually. Such process might only take about 5 seconds. But still it is a process that what we are talking here is a one-shot deal that does not need all those little gossips, preparations of now this, and then that, then this, then this is going to happen. But just do it. We haven't done anything really actually properly. That is a problem that we are facing. That's one of the basic Hinayana discipline, is that learned how to do things as they are. And samsaric or confused world is concerned that we think we have done a lot of things, but we haven't actually done at all. We haven't really got ourselves together to do things properly. We pretended games within ourselves, let alone others. And when we have a chance to play games with ourselves first, and when we feel secure with that game, then we say that we work with the others, which is exaggerated games. So consequently, we don't have anything actually going. Fundamentally speaking, we have faked out the whole thing. That dealing with the others is highly exaggerated. Dealing with oneself is somewhat exaggerated, with a sense of somewhat guilt and confusion and embarrassment to yourself. Because there's usually gossip goes between you and yourself, which the other part of you criticizing you, knowing how fucked up or how confused, how gameful or playful you are. The other part says it's okay, well, let's put it out in public. And the one does that constantly all the time. So we are constantly trapped in that particular game situation, that problem situation. And this particular practice of meditation method brings all these problems in a simple way that we don't have to go through exaggerated sociological, psychological, bureaucratic, psychological trip that you have created yourself. But we can get into simply, directly, starting with the first impression, which is breathe and get into it, simply go along with it and work with it. That's the basic point of shamatha, shine. It's the basic point. But I think also it is important to realize that having done that deliberate process of relating with the ones, instant reactions to awareness, directly, simply, without questioning, one begin to associate sound, smell, sight, every experience that you have in the sensorial world are related to exactly the same thing. You see things, you're with it. With your breathing, you're just simply there, very directly and very simply there. No interpretation, is this going to be good enough? Or am I making mistakes? No such questions arises. Because if you're simple enough, if you're really simple enough that there's no room for those questions, the questions only comes from looking, questioning, lying back, analyzing, trying to make some step towards it. The questions only arises on the basis with how to secure our basic ground of ego. If there's no ego-oriented questions, there's no other questions. It is a statement, somewhat. It is extremely direct and deliberate in some sense. So the basic point of shamatha is a sense of deliberateness. Actually, you are doing something. You are getting into that particular process without make sure what you're doing is okay. But actually things taking place almost in some sense in its own accord, very simply, directly. Probably we should have some short discussion at this point, and maybe that might be helpful. If you have any doubts and apprehension that you feel need some further discussion, and we should get into that. I would like you to ask questions very pointedly, and particularly in terms of a technique, how to handle it, rather than any metaphysical situation which we could discuss later on. Okay?
Rinpoche, is physical pain an expression of ego?
I don't think so, because physical pain is a situation of that you have never sat for such long period of time. Even if you sat for 1 hour, we have never done that in our life. We sat on the ground without doing nothing for 1 hour is unheard. So automatically the body began to react to it, and the body began to become agitated by the whole thing. And similarly, that situation, the physical problem, has nothing to do with the psychological problem, but maybe there's some implications as to that. Psychologically you want to project physical pain, then the body begin to pick up and manifested for your comfort of your mind. That possibility, but I think predominantly in the sitting practice of meditation is just purely need physiological rehabilitation so that you can stay still for lengthy time, which needs a lot of training. Oops.
If you can stay awake, is it just as good to lie flat on your back?
Sorry, can you say that again?
If you can stay awake, then would it be just as good to lie flat on your back?
If you can say what?
Well, which, am I not holding it up? Oh. If you can stay awake, then would it be just as good to meditate lying flat on your back, on the ground?
Well, you see, waiting is a suspension as much as lying on your back. And like if you take a vacation, you lie on the beach on your back. Actually, practically what you're doing is trying to get rid of this particular trip that you took a vacation so you can get back to your job. And somewhat it is bored, but still it feels good. We think feels good. And waiting is different from actually meditational practice, which is not waiting for something else as such, but you are being on the spot, which has nothing to do with the waiting particularly. It has nothing to do with the vacation.
I didn't speak clearly. I didn't use the word waiting. Is it all right to meditate lying on your on your back? The word I used was wake, A-W-A-K-E. If you stay awake.
Awake, I beg your pardon. Yeah. Well, I don't know. The traditional situation is that you're supposed to sit upright because you should be yourself like a rock. If you lay down with your back on the ground, that represents maybe a dead tree. Or, the question is sort of holding yourself together in spite of the boredom situation that presents to you. Uprightness is also that you have a sense of horizontal vision of seeing things happening in front of your head, and a sense of survival, which is part of the whole situation. So it is recommended to sit up.
Could you talk a little bit about following the breath out? I still seem confused about that. I seem to follow it back in. I think I need some help on that.
Well, it seems to be quite simple actually, that there is a sense of breath. As you said, we breathe in any case, we always breathe. There's a sense of breath, and go along with your out breath, and not try to hold on to it as the focal point of concentration as you breathe out. Not do that, but encouragement that breathing out, the breathing is sort of helping you, coaching you to experience something, so you keep your sense of awareness or concentration on the verge of the breathing, just purely the verge. You go out as the breathing go out naturally, and the breathing dissolves in the atmosphere. You dissolve, and in turn, breathing in, you don't have to suck everything into you like a vacuum cleaner to compensate that you do exist particularly. You do exist in any case. So breathing in is just a gap. You go out very subtly, beautifully, with the verge of breathing going out, and your awareness is going out with that highlight of the breathing is your awareness. And you dissolve, breathing dissolve, the breathing in simply. And then you breathe again in the same way. So the sense of going out constantly, skillfully, no trips involved. There's no sense of survival involved except working with the natural physiological process of breathing that does exist within one state of being. Just doing that very simply. And then, in this case of Vipassana, is coming along, as we're going to discuss later on, in terms of shamatha. The breathing situation is very simple. It's just trying to be very precise with the visual experience you might have while you're breathing, or audio situations. Simply relate with them very specifically, and not trying to pick unnecessary collections. Having heard a sound, you heard a sound, just you heard a sound. Beep, somebody's shout, yell, cry, traffic, just heard a sound. That doesn't mean anything, just you heard a sound. You smell cooking food, fried bacon. You smell it, you just smell it. Toast, you smell it. You just smell it, that's it. And then simplify everything into just that level. And you see a red flower on your rug. And you see a spot on the wall. You see flies flying. You just see them very precisely, directly, extremely simply. Just see them as they are, 100% level, if not 200. That's it. And there's no other implications that you have to build your mystical experience or imagination or sense of trust into the teaching, therefore you should make everything as holy. and nothing else involved at all, just purely sensorial literacy. Sensorial literacy. That you read things as they are, you're literate in that own situation. But just to live at that level, that seems to be the basic point.
Talk about openness, no interpretations on what's going on. And you talk about skeptical attitude.
Talked about what?
Skeptical attitude.
Skeptical?
Think twice. And you said something about skeptical openness. I have a little bit of confusion about, how being totally open and not interpreting anything involves skepticism.
Well, openness could be blind. When you open, then everything could come into your way. Because you are open, and therefore situations are uncertain. And if you open, situations are that you are trying to create a vacuum system that things could be sucked into your way. And skepticism is also part of the openness, basically. Openness from the point of view of you're open to all kinds of directions. Like if you drive on the road, you're open to all the signs that it says turn right or turn left, and there's a warning, there's a highway coming. You're open to it. But at the same time, you're skeptical about the whole thing, because you might misread all these signs, and you might have some problems in you that see those things into visionary or mirage, whatever, psychedelic designs, whatever. And you see them as things as they are, directly, very simply. So openness from that point of view is somebody slightly blind. And skepticism is the enlightened version of openness, that you're fully awake, open completely, so you have a chance to see or relate with things as they are. I think we should go through and discuss that particular process as we go on. And it is very difficult for people to distinguish it, because skeptical, when we talk about it, using this particular language, this particular vocabulary, when we talk about skepticism, people have negative preconception. Skepticism is that related with a warning, like what is said on a cigarette package, that the Surgeon General says this is not good, bad for your health, is that there's some sense of warning involved. But we are not talking about purely warning, but we're talking in terms of sharpening your insight, sharpening your intelligence. And you might again say that if you sharpen your intelligence, purpose of sharpening your intelligence may be to be prepared to attack. And there's constant, infinite possibilities of warfare language is involved. That particular chain reaction is for opening, opposed to skepticism. Opening is seemingly naive and kindly. But when we talk about skepticism, there is a sense of danger, potential problem, and prepare that you could attack. But I don't think we are talking in those terms. We are talking about a self-existing openness as well as self-existing skepticism, which is there already, and just opening to it. I think we should get into that. Particularly we could get into that towards the end of our session when we talk about more advanced topics and Mahayana and Vajrayana traditions.
You mentioned, does this work? Okay. You mentioned that at this stage of meditation to approach it with a sense of deliberateness and get directly into the process without a show, but it seems like that deliberateness could be the show that interferes with the process.
Can you say that again, sir?
All right. You said at this stage of meditation to approach it with a sense of deliberateness and get directly into the process without a show. But it seems like that very sense of deliberateness could be the show that interferes with the process.
I don't see any problems there. Can you speak again? I don't see any problems there.
As you're approaching it, that you're deliberately approaching it, that seems to be not being into the process, but being concerned with the approach of the process.
Into the, what is the second one?
Approach. In other words, you're dwelling on the approach and the deliberateness of getting into the process rather than being into the process.
Well, the process is very literal and very obvious. You see, the point is that if you're involved with a direct situation as things that they are, without question, you saw yellow car go by, you saw it, and it did happen. You can never, dispute that with anybody else who said, no, I didn't see it, because actually it did happen. And the sense of literateness. And actually I said literacy in terms of how to learn to read. Which might have some different implication being just a literal thinking, but being educated and a person who can read. Literacy is the term I use. From that point of view, you learn how to read words, B-A-D is what? Is what? Bad? Yeah, that's right, yeah. I think so, yeah. And sense of literacy rather than literalness, a sense of literacy. It's a person who is educated, as you know, how to read, and seeing things as they are directly, very simply. I think you could be literal, but you might interpret things very literally, but that might become too naive and too misguided, because your naivety is also connected with the literal thinking as things as they are in a too simple-minded way. But if you can read if you can read them properly, and then the sense of things as they are become very obvious. You hear sound directly, very simply, as you read a word which says B-A-D, which means bad. And there's obvious things happening. That's precisely the basic point of of Vipassana or Shine, which is a sense of literacy, that you can see things very directly and properly. Because once you learn how to read, you can't interpret the words. You can't say, no, it's not B-A-D, but it's B-E-D. That means bad. You can't say that because it's written, You might want bad so badly. But you can't say that it is B-A-E-D. It had to be B-A-D because it's written. So you can't chicken out, or you can't do anything with it because it's written in black and white language. That's why literacy is important rather than interpretation.
I wanted to ask another question about physical pain. Is it a good thing to work with, to just, if you're in a position, just to stay in that position and just deal with whatever pain or itches or scratches come up? Or is it sort of harmful or detrimental to adjust yourself? I guess you have to carry it a state further to get in a position that might be painful.
I'm not quite sure what you're exactly asking.
Well, when you're sitting after a while, your legs start. When you're sitting after a while, your legs start hurting, or maybe you'll get an itch on your head. Is it good to just let that pain stay there, or does it make any difference if you adjust yourself?
Well, you see, you mean sitting practice?
Yes, sitting practice.
Well, there's no point in torturing yourself to begin with, because then the whole process, the whole idea is involved with developing some sense of composure from the psychological point of view. And there's no point in torturing physically and trying to sit through pins and needles. Things like that. There's no point in doing that. It is advised to adjust yourself, resettle yourself, as you said, and don't make a martyr of yourself. Just do it. Sit, and if you reshuffle yourself, do it. Go ahead. But there's a point there that if you sometimes such situations of meditation is psychosomatic type nature. Sometimes it is realistic, a real thing. So one had to be very careful and clever and intelligent with that. So whenever there's psychological approach of that I have reshuffled myself, rearranged myself 2 minutes ago, now I don't want to do it again because I want to be entertained. And then you should sit through. But if actually it is happening at physical bodily level, which is obviously able to distinguish, hopefully, and then you should rearrange yourself and not make yourself a martyr. And I think that's a basic important point. There are certain traditions of Buddhist schools, particularly that of the Japanese and Chinese tradition, that you sit and you are supposed to imitate like the Buddha for a long time. And you just do it for 24 hours a day and torture yourself. And that has become very dictatorial and somewhat uncompassionate to physical well-being. And we have a quotation for that which proves that what a Buddha felt, that you should be kind to your body. And once Buddha's disciple Ananda, and he decided to fast for some reason. He thought he wasn't austere enough or something. Ananda was collapsing and he was very weak and frail. And the Buddha says, if there's no body, there's no dharma. if there's no body, there's no food. If there's no food, there's no body. So he went on a long discourse that you should eat well, sleep well, take care of your body properly, and conflicting pain on your body does not help. And that extends this particular question at this point, seemingly we got carried away somewhat, is that keeping fast and inflicting pain on your body in any way does not help, because the body and the mind are interdependent. If a body is weak physiologically or chemically, the mind cannot function, in turn that you can't attain enlightenment. So that was Buddha's philosophy and attitude, that we should, at the beginner setting people, that people could reshuffle themselves up to the level of physiological problems. But I don't think that's particularly the problem, particularly if you're young, that you can identify yourself or train yourself to suit into new situation. The students who sit for Datun or month-long training practices have adapted themselves after 2 weeks to completely, physically they find it completely comfortable, as if you're sitting on a chair. The only problem that they face is the psychological neurosis that are coming out, and that cannot be helped. That's the problem that we're facing. So I think physically there's no problem, and you can readjust yourself, because for a long time, in a lot of situations that in the West nobody just sat and do nothing for 20 minutes. Nobody had ever done that. I mean, unless you're completely lunatic. Then you have occupation already going on. So nobody who is completely sane and reasonable, sensible people who sat for 20 minutes is unheard of. Nobody has done that before. So obviously you have some physical repercussions of that, and maybe some sort of guilt conflict, not making yourself productive, industrious, making telephone calls, writing something, at least, people are very concerned about wasting time, making yourself useful. And those problems are deep-rooted in our mind. We might have some repercussions with that. But I think at this point, if we talk in terms of that sitting still and doing nothing is based on enlightenment. The only way to attain enlightenment is sit still and practice, as well as develop a sense of awareness of your life. I think people are already enough convinced that you begin to feel that there's no guilt involved, at least, which might be the beginning point, that you are okay to sit. You can move around and you can help yourself just to sit. The point is just to sit. Don't give up. Don't walk out, please. That seems to be the basic point. You can do it. People in the past have done it, you can do it. So, good luck. Well, ladies and gentlemen, maybe we should close our meeting tonight here at this point. And there's some further remark I would like to make at this point. Please don't go away. Is that there is an intern practice that's taking place on a coming Sunday. Intern is a day-long sitting practice of meditation. We have somewhat cut down the schedule, planning to cut down the schedule, so this particular intern is not going to be the ideal 100% interns that the members of the community in Kamadzong or Taylor or Tiger people do it, but somewhat adapted to your particular need and requirements. Probably it ends somewhere around about 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock. I don't remember exact schedule. It could be announced. But however, I would like to encourage you to take part, those who are particularly interested in sitting practice and meditation. It seemed to be necessary to do that. sit with us and practice. And an intern practice involves alternating sitting practice and a walking meditation, which is a part of the practice as well. So in terms of the walking meditation, that the technique of practice is just to use the movements of your legs as the same as that you've been relating with your breath. So that's basically the whole point. And it is being requested to minimize unnecessary chatter and eat mindfully and skillfully. And that seems to be the basic point, but I would like you to take part in such an intense situation. And I'm not so sure the intern programs in the Karma Zone community is going to happen. Anybody knows? The Karma Zone? When is next intern in the Karma Zone? Next Sunday? This coming Sunday? Mm-hmm. Friday?
Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday.
So there is another intense situation is also available, which is Friday evening and Saturday and Sunday. So you're also welcome to relate with that. If you are a married couple and both of you like to go for an intern, maybe you're welcome to come to Karma Zone intern on Saturday, and your husband or wife could do the other day. So you could set babysitting situations, things like that could be worked out. So it is necessary, and I would like to you to feel that the glimpse of when somebody practiced completely without any entertainment, not even hearing the traffics. And somebody who went up in the mountain just sat for 12, 20 years doing nothing. And people have done that, and they are known to be entertained by their own enlightenment festivals that takes place in their state of mind. However, but whatever, that it is possible that you could do this in the cities. And I would like you to encourage again and again that the situation is open. This coming Saturday and Sunday, an intense situation is involved here, which probably we have more rooms, more space to move about. And there is a lesser room, but there is a more specially organized situations taking place in the shrine in Karma Zone. And we've been using that place for a long time. So trying to think in terms of doing intern whole day intensive sitting practice, which will be extremely good. And particularly since we are doing this particular work together in the class and so forth, if you have more experience, more ideas about what we are doing experientially, that makes us easy to communicate and cut down the space and time situation. We don't have to argue and re-explaining words and the concepts anymore. So it is always good to sit. So I would like you to keep that in mind. Thank you very much. Good night.